Welcome to the Pod. I'm here with Devin Grindrod, evidential psychic medium and Reiki Master. Hi, Devin.
Hi, Brittany. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you. I'm so excited that you were able to join me today. And I would love for our listeners to get to know you a little bit. Can you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so I am an evidential psychic medium and Reiki master. And with that, I help people to heal from trauma on the spiritual and energetic levels. And on another side of my business, I help people to start their spirit-led businesses through the trauma-informed lens and build up their confidence and figure out who they want to serve in the world.
Oh, I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So I think this is I love that your background talks about trauma and helping with that, because I feel like this episode in particular, we're talking about like balancing the holidays when it comes to your healing journey and with your trauma and maybe the people that trigger you. And so I was wondering, how do you feel about balancing that?
Well, I think that there are so many options because regardless of whether or not we may feel like it, we are in total control of what we do, especially as adults. So we have the option to limit the amount of time that we spend with family. We have the option to go and see our family or not, spend time with our chosen family instead, and really just take it day by day, moment by moment, however we're feeling. Because sometimes our family can be wonderful and supportive, and they are our rock through whatever trauma we're going through. And on the opposite side of the spectrum, sometimes our family members are our perpetrators, and it's not a safe space for us to be in. And so figuring out where you lie on that spectrum and what works best for you. Because as we mentioned in our previous call, the cancel culture of just anybody who's ever we believe that they've offended us in some way, we have to cancel them out and no longer speak to them. But figuring out how we can love our family, even if there are differences there. And again, this doesn't apply to when our family is our perpetrator. So figuring out what that perfect balance is for you, and know that it may change at any time.
Thank you. I really appreciate your perspective, because we are in that cancel culture stage of life, and I feel like a lot of people are just like, just get rid of him, you don't even need that person in your life. But it's I think it's easier said than done, and it really depends, like you said, on what they may have done to you or how it may have affected you. So with that being said, like for those people that are they're getting ready to go to this dinner, now Thanksgiving has passed, but I guess like Christmas dinner, and they know that that person is there. How do you like avoid maybe that the person that you can kind of handle, but maybe they've created a trigger or sparked a trigger? How can you avoid that?
Well, one thing that some of my mentors have taught me is that perception is projection. So if we're triggered by the actions of somebody, that is something within us that we need to heal. So if you did something right now to upset me, it's my responsibility to take a reflection and say, why am I upset by Brittany's actions? What is this triggering within me that I need to know, that I need to heal? Because triggers are, well, unless it's a trauma trigger, well, it's still, triggers are aspects of ourselves that need to be healed. And so if it's just Uncle Steve who has different politics than we do, figure out why it's so charging for you. And also, you can change the subject. So Uncle Steve comes up and he starts talking about subject X that you just have very parallel, passionate views on. You can simply say, you know what, I really want to enjoy our holiday today, Uncle Steve. Let's talk about football instead, or whatever it is, or how's your son doing? Just bring in another subject, let that person know, hey, I love you and I care about you, but this is my boundary. And that's what it's all about, creating those healthy boundaries and sticking to them. And if that family member isn't respecting your boundary, then excuse yourself from that situation and say, okay, I told you my boundaries and you're crossing them right now, and then go talk to somebody else. Or if it's really upsetting, you can leave the party early. You know, there's so many different options.
I'm glad you brought up boundaries, because boundaries, I feel like some of us have a hard time with being consistent with them, or
Mhm.
putting them up, or taking them down if you're a little bit too far over on the boundary
Yeah.
side. So what advice would you give for people that maybe are not confident in their boundary?
You deserve to have your boundaries met. Whether or not you feel like you're worthy of your boundaries, you are worthy of them. You are enough. And it's about allowing yourself to believe that you are enough, and that you are worthy and deserving of having these boundaries and having people in your life respect them. And if somebody doesn't respect your boundaries, remind them of your boundaries, and then make your decision of that person based on that reminder. Because people will cross boundaries all the time. My husband and I cross each other's boundaries all the time, and we love and respect one another. And it's about saying, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, or you're right, that's my bad. Versus if you remind somebody for crossing your boundaries and they react poorly or they don't support you, then that's somebody you question. But if somebody crosses your boundaries, you remind them and they comply, they respect your boundaries, then keep that person around. That is a keeper.
So if they don't comply, let's say we're back at Christmas, um, you've told Uncle Steve, like, hey, listen, this is not my cup of tea. How's your son? But Uncle Steve's still pushing. Do you walk away? Like, how do you go about that boundary?
Yeah, you can walk away, say, you know what, I laid down, you can say this verbatim, write it down. I've laid down my boundary and you're not respecting that right now. I would love to talk to you when you're ready to respect it. Turn around, talk to somebody else.
I love that.
That's you're still staying respectful, and you're letting that other person know this is what I need from you. And when people aren't respecting you like that, it's okay to be blunt. And one thing, especially as women, we're always taught, oh, we have to, maybe they didn't mean it like this. They probably did. If you feel like they meant it in a certain way, they probably did. And so it's okay to be assertive and say, this is what I need. I'm not getting it from you, so I'm not continuing this experience.
Yeah.
TTFN.
I'm so glad that you bring this up, because we do tend to do that a lot. And I think that we start to feel bad and think, well, I'm hurting this person. And I think like that's where that, like I always bring up the fact that selfish, I think, needs to be defined,
Mhm.
because the definition that we have put on it as society is like, you're selfish if you tell someone that here's a boundary, or you're stuck up, or all these things. But it's like, we need to be more selfish a bit with these boundaries, because it is hurting us. And just because you don't want to hurt someone else doesn't mean you need to hurt you in the process. And I feel like we have a hard time.
Yeah, I had one of my coaches said something that like changed my life. It was one of those one-liners where you're just total mind blown. I was talking to her about, so I don't even remember the experience that I was sharing with her, and she just said, in those situations, I say, I'm not available to martyr myself and to make myself small to meet somebody else's expectation of me. And I was just like, whoa, I agree with that. And so when you're in those situations and it's like, am I being selfish? Well, if I am being made to adjust my morals and values to meet somebody else's, that feels very uncomfortable. And I don't want to do that. I'm not available to make myself small and to martyr myself to allow somebody else to feel better.
Yeah,
And both feel better and both stay within the range of our morals and values.
I like that. I think that is like a mind blown one.
Yeah.
It's so true. Like I'm glad we're bringing this up, because I feel like this happens so much with so many people in I feel bad that we didn't have this before Thanksgiving, but for all of you going to Christmas, this is for you.
You know what? We need boundaries 365. So
Yeah, that's true.
whenever you hear this, this is when you needed to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to ask, we talked about this a bit when we were on the phone, and we talked about how, because I was talking about how when you go into a family function and you are on the healing journey, a lot of times you start to see where people are unhealed, and it's not to say like you need to attack them or anything, but you start to notice. And then I feel like we talked about how we can't let the ego get involved. So what did you mean by that when we were talking about it?
So when people are on spiritual awakening, they become more aware of themselves. They tend, and I've been guilty of this too. You look at somebody and you're just like, wow, that is a trauma response, and they should heal from that. But starting to see where people are hurting it's a gift, because that means that you recognize those places within yourself and you are able to heal. But people, especially in the older generations, they weren't taught that this was something that was available to them, especially older men. So I know, fathers and grandfathers, there's a lot of trauma around that. And it's just allowing people to be where they're at, meeting them where they're at, where they feel safe in those moments, and know that everybody heals on their own time if they choose to heal at all. And healing is a choice, and some people choose to make it and some people don't. And I think we have to love people for who they are and just continue to meet themselves where they're at. Because if we can't love people for who they are and meet them where they're at, how can we do the same for us on our healing journey?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And I know it goes both ways where you have, and I don't want to like divide it like the unhealed versus the healed, but people on the path, people not really on the path. It goes both ways where you definitely see like on the not going on the path, it they think that some, not all, think that you're like high and mighty now because now you're trying to heal yourself. And now you think, or it's almost like they're projecting their insecurity onto you over your healing. And
Mhm.
I try to like remind myself that anytime someone makes like a like comment to me, like, oh, blah, blah, blah. And I have to remind myself, okay, they're in this, where they're where they want to be
Mhm.
and where I want to be. But just because I don't need to take on their upset onto me. And
Correct.
just, and I think that then on the opposite end too, it's like we have to be careful of not being like, well, you're unhealed. So
Yeah.
deuces. So I'm glad that this is brought up, because I think that we forget that it actually takes so much to be on the path, and it's not for everybody, and that's okay.
Yeah. And we don't know where people started. So the version of that person that you see and you're judging for being quote unquote unhealed, that might be their chapter 12 on their healing journey.
Yeah.
And also, we heal in different ways. So I'm sure you've healed parts of yourself that I have yet to heal, and I've healed parts of myself that you have yet to heal. And then there's the onion proverb. So, especially with really traumatic events, there's, that first layer that you heal, and then you think you're so amazing and this is like gone and you're done with it. And then you come up against another roadblock and you're like, oh man, I have to heal this now in a new and different way. And so it's just about continuing to better ourselves. And I don't, I, so I love the healing world and the healing journey. I'm in that trauma informed care, all that business. But recognizing that none of us are broken, we just are humans responding or reacting. So I like to look at people's actions as either coming from a place of love or searching for love. And when I look at actions like that, it's easier for me to find compassion and not to get wrapped up in the story of what's going on, or, oh my gosh, this person blew up at me over what was seemingly insignificant to me. And I feel like they're really projecting their stuff on me. It must be because they're looking for love in this area. And I have a lot of compassion for that. I'm sorry you're not feeling loved. But again, I'm not available to martyr myself or make myself small. So here is my boundary. and then we both go on our way.
Like that. I think that that's such a beautiful perspective and a beautiful way to um not belittle others, because if you don't like being belittled, why are you belittling others?
Yeah, I know I would abhor if somebody came up to me and said, "Hey, I see that you're not healed in this way. Do you want me to show you how you can be a better human?" There would be a lot of triggers that came up for me around that, And so what would make us think that somebody else would be receptive to that?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so true. Thank you so much again for bringing that in, because I know when we first talked about this, I just didn't think about that perspective, and I love that you brought that perspective in, because it's true. Some of us do get to a little certain place and we're like, "Look at me," and then we're like, "Wait, stay humble, you, stay humble."
Yeah, and it's okay. Please be proud of the healing that you've done. And, you started from the bottom, now you're here. We all have different rock bottoms. We all have different journeys. And, I think people can sometimes get caught in needing to have been the most broken person in the room. I've had the most struggle. And so I deserve to take up the most space and things like that. And it's just, we're all equal and deserving in the space that we need to take up. We can all learn something from one another, and we all have something to share.
Yeah, I'm also happy you brought that up too, because that's true. You do sometimes, I feel like there's certain situations you get caught up in, like, this happened to me. And then this other person's like, this happened to me. It's like, we can all be human.
It almost becomes like a trauma competition, and it's just wrapped up, people being wrapped up in their stories, and that's okay. It's where they're at. And I know anybody who's experienced trauma, I think we've all been there.
Absolutely. And that's where the boundaries come in. If it becomes overwhelming, it's like, okay, I honor you, but I'm going to walk away now.
Yeah.
So we also talked about, and this is something I brought up, where maybe having a trigger buddy. What do you think if someone had like someone that they could text, if they're, maybe they went to their Christmas and one of the cousins that wasn't supposed to be there ends up showing up, and now a trigger has come about from trauma. What do you think about having a trigger buddy? Someone you could text and be like, "Hey, blah blah blah's here. I'm triggered," or something.
I think having a support system that is accessible to you just about all the time, because nobody's there 24/7, is a really great idea. We need somebody that we can just unload on and say, "Hey, this is happening. This was unexpected," or "I'm feeling this type of way," whatever it is. And you and I had mentioned making sure that the person that you're confiding in is also in a growth mindset and isn't stuck in their story and where they're at on their journey. And again, respect to everyone wherever they're at on their journey, but making sure that this is a person who will be able to help you and give you sound advice, and not come from a place of being triggered and just saying like, "Run, leave immediately," or unless that is the appropriate answer, unless cousin or whoever is the perpetrator, because if that's happening to you, you don't deserve to be in that place of scared. You don't have to be in the same place as your perpetrator, no matter who they are or where they stand in your life.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I feel like the way that because I was talking about this before with my counselor, how if you feel like that fight, flight, freeze mode,
Mhm.
that's probably that time to kind of be like, take your breather and maybe go outside, or maybe, do what you need to do if that is your perpetrator, for sure. Um, I want to talk about too, because we were talking about how, like, let's say you're going to this event and you're actually with your trigger buddy, which could be your partner in crime. And talk about a safe word. What do you think about having a safe word during family gathering?
Whatever you got to do to keep yourself safe. If you have a safe word, if there's like a signal that you do, if you pull your ear or something, do whatever you need to do to make yourself feel safe. I think first and foremost.
Thank you. I think, yeah. I never thought about these before, but I think that this is going to be very beneficial for future family gatherings, for really anybody listening as well. So I just wanted to have ask you before we go is what lasting advice would you give others that are having a hard time balancing with the healing and family trauma and preparing for the triggers and such?
Just know that you deserve to heal. You deserve to feel balanced and well and safe in the world. Safety is your first and foremost right as a human being. It's if you're looking at the chakra system, it's the first chakra. It is a root chakra. It is your foundation. You absolutely, unequivocally deserve to feel safe. And whatever you need to do to feel safe, practice that.
Thank you. I love that. With that being said, where can our listeners find you?
Yeah, so I am primarily on Instagram and TikTok, and my handle on both of those is Spiritually Balanced. And I also have a website, spirituallybalanced.com.
Awesome. I love that you're on TikTok. It can be so fun over there. So as you know, I do affirmations, and I wanted you as our special guest to share your favorite affirmation for our listeners today.
Yeah, so this is something that I've used on my healing journey. Whenever those negative spirals or the moments of feeling unsafe come into my experience, I just repeat, I am safe, I am healthy, and I am loved. And especially with negative spirals in your mind, if you are thinking about one thing, you cannot be thinking about two things at the exact same time. So repeating that mantra wipes out the other thoughts with something that is much more beneficial and healing. And then something else that I practice, which isn't a mantra, but in moments when I feel unsafe, is I tell myself all of the ways that I am safe. So right now I am safe because I'm in my home. I am safe because I have a home. I am safe. There's roof over my head. There's food in my fridge. And I just remind myself of all of the ways that I'm safe in that moment.
Thank you so much. I think that's going to be so beneficial for everyone. And I'm so happy to have you on here today. You shared so much that was needed. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you, Brittany. It's been so great getting to know you and to connect with you.
Absolutely. So as you all know, with this, you are loved, you are worthy, you are cherished, and we are proud of you. Until next time on the Pre-Pod.